everyone, welcome to the 4th episode of the Pattern vlog. Today we've had the wheels and tyres arrive. I'm going to teach you a little bit about tyres, pretty basic stuff about the sizing and how to actually identify what age the tyres are. So I'll show you how to do that. After that, we're going to move on. We're going to chuck the sway bar into the front of the car. We're going to drop it on the ground and then we're going to do an alignment. So I'll show you the easiest way to do an alignment in your own garage.
Alright, let's start with the basics. So this is how you actually measure what size your tyres are. So this number here, 265, that's the width of the tyre side to side. The next number is the profile, so 35, so that's how tall the tyre is in relation to the width. Then you got your rim size, which is R18, so that's the size of the rim, so we're running 18s. So this lettering system here actually indicates the top speed of the tyre. So a Y, I think it's 250 kilometers per hour top speed. So the later the number in the alphabet, the higher your top speed is. So I was fortunate enough to get these tyres second-hand. They're in really good condition. They've only actually done 6 laps of Phillip Island, so they're nearly new. But the age of a tyre is a pretty big factor. So to determine what the age of a tyre is, you have this number here. So the first 2 digits are what week the tyre was manufactured, and the last 2 digits are what year it was. So these were manufactured in the 23rd week of 2014. So they're a little bit old, but they've been stored correctly. So you want to store a tyre in a dark place where the temperature doesn't change too much. One thing you can do, you can use a durometer. This little tool here is a durometer. It's got a little point on the end of it here, and as you push that point in, the dial moves. We're going to push it into the tyre here and hold it as firm as we can. You'll see that dial still moving downwards. So once it comes to a stop, which it has about there, so call that, say, 65. So then we can try and contrast that with another tyre, so that's still pretty soft. Let's contrast the number on the hand cooks to these 2018 Nankang AR1s. So that's about 66. So very comparable, and these are a pretty soft compound R-spec tyre, and these aren't very old. So these tyres here, these are a 2014. You can see these Yokohama tyres have a short durometer reading of about 10 harder than the Hancooks and the Nankang AR1s. So when you're doing your wheel nuts up, always start them off by hand. You don't want to get a cross thread happening. So I like to nip them up just slightly with this before I torque them to spec. Always do a star pattern when I'm doing these wheels up. So here, over here, and then I'll torque that on the ground. The front's looking pretty good for clearance. We've already got it mostly under the guard there, so it actually wants a little bit more camber in the front. So these Ray Graham lights, they're actually a 9.5 inch wide by a plus 38 offset and an 18. So they're about as wide as I've seen people get under the back of these with a 265 tyre. So hopefully by the time I've rolled some camber in, pumped the guards a little bit, we should be able to get that to clear. Alright, I find the best way to get a guard roll happening to start with is just like a couple light taps with a mallet. Just get that lip started. Almost forgot, before I get too carried away trying to get the wheels to fit, I'll get this sway bar chucked in. So the easiest way to put these sway bars in, rather than undoing the 4 bolts, holding the actual sway bar itself and then the end links, you best actually drop it out. It's really quite difficult to try and poke it through the body, so it's not much more work to drop this out and do it on the ground, so that's what I recommend. So again, we've gone for a 25.4mm sway bar. So this is made by Hard Race, and we've got the adjustable end links, so we'll chuck this on, get it up in the car, and then I'll show you how to set it up.
Track's like got about 2 inch tops, it's about an inch
Alright, this is not really where I wanted to be a couple days out from the race, but when we started trying to wheel align this thing, I realised more and more how compromised the rear subframe was. So we've actually gone and ordered a new rear subframe. I tried to pull the other one straight, but it's just too compromised. I'll try and show you some shots, but it's pretty bad. I tried to use the adjustments on the lower control arms to offset the damage, but it just wasn't right. It was never going to be right. So I didn't think there was much point trying to persist with that. So we went and picked up a new one. It was 300 bucks for a new subframe. The right hand side knuckle, where the actual upper ball joint goes into it, it was also damaged. It was egged and flared. So the actual knuckle itself was stuffed as well. And then finally, we had the upper control arm. It actually measured up pretty straight, but I was just concerned about its structural integrity after taking such a big hit, because it obviously egged that knuckle so badly. I'm thinking surely it's taken some damage itself. So rather than having that thing fall in half on the track, we've decided I'm gonna replace that as well. So now everything that was damaged in the accident's been replaced. So it's a mad rush to put it all back together now for the race on Sunday. So we've only got a couple days to put it all back in, get the guards rolled and give it an alignment. I've still got to get some more camber in the front and then get the rear end all set up. So I've got a heap to do, so we'll get into it. So this is the new subframe, this is the old subframe. On the old one you can see that the crash damage is pushed it rearwards and inwards. So this is how it should be. So I tried porta power on this, I tried a few other bits and pieces of crowbar, and I couldn't pull it straight. So rather than try and muck around with this and align a car with, you know, wrong parts or damaged parts, I thought, let's start again. It wasn't a lot of money, but for what it's gonna do for the car and its wheel alignments, it's gonna be a much better thing.
You can see here the damage on the old crash knuckle compared to the new one, so very egged out, and this is perfectly round, so we'll swap that in too.
It's just after midnight. We got the subframe and everything bolted back in. So tomorrow we'll do a wheel alignment and then off to the track the day after.
Tomorrow.
So today I'm gonna roll the rear guards. We're gonna show you an easy way to get some camber in the front. I'm gonna show you a couple little tricks and bits and pieces in the rear end, how to set that up. I'm gonna show you how to neutralize a sway bar for the driver, why those adjustable end links are important. And then once we get the alignment done, we should pretty much be ready for the track day. All right, so one of the best ways to actually check your camber is this application for your phone called Pocket Pit. Pretty sure you can get it for iOS or Android. So what you do, you put the wheel to the side that it recommends, keep your phone 90 degrees, and that'll give you a camber reading. So as you can see, that's negative about -5 or 6. We want to get to -4 with the front. So we've already got the camber plate maxed out, so I'm going to show you a way that you can add a little bit extra camber without having to spend any money. So I've actually done a little trick here. You can swap the top camber plates left to right on these BRZs and 86s, and what that'll allow you to do is add some caster as well as camber. So I've got that all the way back, so that's giving me as much negative caster as I can achieve, and I'm going to add some more camber. So I've got about 2.5 degrees now. I'll show you how I'm going to go about adding an extra little bit to get it to 4 degrees camber.
So this is the front knuckle and the coilover, so this is where it joins. So what a lot of people do, they can add a camber bolt in here, which is a cammed nut that'll allow you to rotate this inwards and outwards. If you can't afford a camber bolt, what I like to do is actually die grind a small slot in here, which will allow you to rotate the knuckle assembly in, which will give you a little bit more camber. So you can add a washer to it and tack the washer in place once you've got your camber set, or alternatively you can just do it up tight. I've never actually had anything move there before to change my camber, so I find that this is a pretty efficient way of doing it on a budget. So even with the two nuts loose, you can see that there's camber play within the strut already. I'm just going to elongate that hole slightly to give us a little bit extra. So when you're doing something like this, you want to keep in mind, you want to remove as little material as possible to keep it as strong as possible. So what I like about doing this over camber bolts is these bolts are actually stronger than camber bolts, so you've not just got added strength by using the OEM bolts, you're also saving money. So I find this is the best way to do it. You should be able to see there I've created a lot more camber, so we'll stick that back together, we'll give it a measure up, and we'll try and work out if that's close to 4 degrees. All right, so I got it back on the ground. I'm gonna chuck this pocket pit app on it again, get it squared up. So it's looking like we're at about 3.4 or 3.3 degrees camber now. So we still want a little bit more, but that's a good start. At the moment, I've now got the rear end loosely aligned. I've got the camber right, and as you can probably see here, the wheel doesn't clear properly. So I've got a guard roller. I'm gonna try and roll the guards a little bit. I'm gonna do that as quickly as possible and then start getting the actual toe correct. So I've got the camber right using that pocket pit application on my phone. So that's in the ballpark. So we'll just get those guards rolled, get some clearance in there, and then we'll get the toe right. In a race car, it's pretty important to neutralize the sway bars. So what you do is you get these adjustable end links, you can raise or lower one side of the link. So what you're trying to achieve is your sway bar being neutral with your weight on board. So when you're cornering, the sway bar is neutral on both left and right corners, and in a straight line under braking, the sway bar is neutral. You want your weight to be part of the calculation when you're setting the sway bar. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna chuck my dad in the car. I'm gonna then adjust the sway bar until it's neutral. So then when we race the car, the weight of the driver will be part of the equation, and that will mean it'll brake more efficiently. You won't lock a wheel in a straight. It'll be more consistent in a corner left to right. So that's what you sort of want to achieve. All right, both the sway bars are in. We got the preload set on those. We'll drop it down on the ground now and we'll get a wheel alignment happening. I'm going to start doing the wheel alignment. So to set up a rig like this, you need 2 bits of aluminium RHS. It doesn't have to be aluminium, but it's nicer when it's nice and light like this. You get some string line, you drill some holes in it. The holes need to be absolutely symmetrical. So for this rig, I've got them 1 meter aside from the center. I've strung this string line up, and so now what we're going to do to square the rig up, we're going to measure to the center of the wheels, to the actual center of the hub assembly. We'll measure out, we'll make sure that both sides on both wheels, front and rear, are the same, and that'll square the rig up, and then from there I'll show you how to align it. Alright. So that's 19 centimeters, and this side's 19 and a half. So we're going to scooch the rig that way a smidge. Okay, we'll see what that looks like. Alright, so that's 192.5 millimeters. So that's squared up both sides. We'll do the back now. 171 on that side. 180. We want to go about 4.5 mil, so. Alright, so we got the rear squared up, 176 millimeters on both sides. We're going to double check the front and start the alignment at the front end. So when you're measuring your toe, you want a consistent point on the rim in a dead center line parallel with this string line here. So on this side we have 105, and on the front we have 103.5. That's towed at 1.5 millimeters over that distance, over 18 inches. So with an underpowered car like this, you want your wheels pretty close to straightforward, but slightly towed out. So these numbers are pretty perfect actually. I'll check the other side. I'm gonna leave this alone for now. I'll see what the other side looks like. 105 and 103.5. Exactly the same as the other side. So I'm actually a bit surprised that's perfect. So I've changed the height of this car, that the toe's not really been affected at all. So I'm gonna lock that down like that and we'll move on to the back. All right, so what have we got in the rear? We've got 99, 96. So in the rear end of a rear wheel drive car, you want the smallest amount of toe in, particularly if you're underpowered. If you're more
powerful vehicle, you might go for a little bit more toe in, but generally speaking, a small amount of toe in is ideal. 97.5. That's 95. So 97, 95. So on the rear, we want to go 97 on the rear end of the rear wheel and 98 on the front. So that'll give us 1 millimeter of toe in over 18 inches. We've now got 96.5. 96.5. So like that's perfectly square, but we want a little bit of toe in, so I'll make another adjustment.
Yeah, how many put in cat one?
So now we've got 96. That's 96.5. So that's within half a mil of toe in over 18 inches, so that'll do. So we'll put the car up on the hoist and we'll nip it down and that'll do.